right-handers in a row, might be a guy to throw in there for a weekend. Adam Hazley, what's his story?
Adam Hazley was slated to be the center fielder for the Phillies. He was diagnosed with a left adductor strain, which is like a groin strain, which will sideline him for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because that opens up a spot for Odubel Herrera. Odubel Herrera used to have some fantasy value in the past, and he's having a pretty good spring right now. He's batting .261 on the spring with 2 homers and a stolen base. So he's a guy that if you want a waiver guy early in the season to take a gamble on, that's the guy to take a gamble on.
Wow, I remember that name from a couple of years ago in fantasy baseball. And where did he go since?
Well, he was suspended. I believe they kicked him off the team for a while, and he didn't play all of last year.
There you go.
So yeah, he had a whole bunch of lawsuits against him. So whatever, his personal stuff aside, he can still play baseball.
Interesting. I totally, completely forgot about him. Like, he fell off the map in my book. But interesting that you mentioned that point, that for deeper leagues, mono NL leagues might be interesting to pick him up early, especially if you have Hazley, I would say. Lorenzo Cain, he's a guy who didn't play all of last year. 35 years old. ATC has a 10-12 projection with .269 average. Pretty much projects to be a fifth outfielder with, a little bit of hint of power, speed. Nobody's thinking he's going to be anything where he was a couple years ago. But what's going on with him?
Well, it goes to show how much confidence the Brewers have in him by signing Jackie Bradley Jr. to play center field. Cain he's brought along very slowly this spring because of a quad issue that the Brewers have described as very minor. It was so minor that they signed Jackie Bradley while he was dealing with it. He's actually scheduled, though, to make his spring debut later this week. So we'll see what he has left, but I think it may come down to a platoon, because I think having them as a platoon, or have even Cain play a corner outfield spot with someone like Avisel Garcia taking off every couple of days, that may make their defense a little bit better.
Interesting. Yeah, I have not had any notion of picking up Cain anywhere. Although ATC shows him as somewhat of a decent player, 486 at bats. A hint of this and that, batting average, which actually helps you later on in the drafts. But for some reason, I have not needed to pick up that profile late in drafts. Are you any interested in him?
No, because there's so many other middle infielders around that time who have the same type of profile, so I don't think you need it in the outfield.
Okay. Cole Calhoun, somebody who I was high on coming into the year, fantastic last year. He was going to be a large bargain, according to ATC, if fully healthy. ATC now has pushed his at-bats down to 445 at-bats. This is somebody that, and you'll give us the injury update in a second, but, if you have an IL slot, he's definitely somebody that's worth buying. You put him in the IL slot, and there you go, and you got a productive player going on. If you have an NFBC team or a league that does not have any IL slots, is this a player who is still worth drafting on the bench for you?
100%, and I actually have him. We actually have him in a couple of leagues already. He had actually a partial medial meniscectomy surgery for his right knee, which means they took out part of the medial meniscus for his right knee the first week in March. He was expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks following that, which means that he should be back sometime mid-April, which means he'll only miss maybe 2 to 3 weeks of the entire season. But during that time, players who can fill in, Pavin Smith, Tim LeCastro, and Dalton Varsho may benefit the most, which is why you're seeing him go earlier in drafts, because he has catcher eligibility, so he can play outfield, and he may benefit from Cole Calhoun not being there for the first couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, I have Dalton Varsho in a couple of leagues as my catcher, which is, if you have a catcher who's going to not play catcher and play the outfield, you're just getting a lot of at-bats. Even the really good catchers sometimes only get, 60% of a share of the total. So Varsho is interesting. I think the discount that the market is showing for Cole Calhoun does not warrant his drop in value for himself. I guess people hear knee injury and knee surgery, and they really get scared. Is that what's going on here?
I think when you hear surgery and this early in the season, people get scared. The same thing happened a couple of years ago when JD Martinez in spring training had a foot injury, and we actually took advantage of that because people were buying him very, very low, and we decided, you know what, this is a buying opportunity. You can get profit there, so that's why we went after him. So when people hear surgery, they get really scared, but people come back from these surgeries, players come back from these surgeries pretty quick, 4 to 6 weeks usually, and usually they don't miss much. It shouldn't affect his power too much because he's going to come back when he's ready.
Interesting. Okay, good to know here. Evan Longoria. Longoria is somebody who has zero upside, zero downside. Like, this guy is going to hit, 15, 12, 16, something like that homers. Average will be, we're talking about a guy who, you know what you're getting. He's not somebody I would draft that late, but if your team is injured and he's on the waiver wire, sure, I guess, fill in for the time being. What's Longoria's status as if?
Well, Longoria is dealing with plantar fasciitis again. He had the same issue back in July 2019, and it kept him out for about a month. He is playing right now in the spring. He's only DHing, which is not playing third yet. So that's another situation where you can see some of those guys in San Francisco, like a Wilmer Flores, gaining more time at third base just because Longoria is not, he's getting older, he's having these issues, and plus plantar fasciitis is an issue that can linger for months. It was so bad for Luke Voigt last year, they ended up needing surgery at the end of the year to help it, and it zapped all his power. So Evan Longoria is a guy, even if you see him on your waiver wire, I think I'd probably take the backup to Evan Longoria as opposed to picking him up.
Very interesting. Okay, so stay away from Longoria and pick up the backup. Good advice. Miguel Andujar for the Yankees. I didn't have him as playing much before this, and now he's got an injury. So tell us about that.
Well, Yankees manager Aaron Boone said that Andujar visited a specialist this week after experiencing wrist and hand soreness. He was previously experiencing the same issues while playing in the Dominican Winter League, and they said that he does have some issues. They weren't really that specific. They have some issues with the muscle and the nerve in his wrist and hand. So if you were taking him as a flyer, I think he's going to start the season. I'm almost certain he'll start in the season on the IL. So he's a guy that if you have room and you're hoping for another Yankee to get hurt, that's great, but he's going to start the season on the IL.
All right, but let's say he gets healthy and everybody else stays healthy. Who is he unseating for playing time here?
I think, if anything, he will get traded. I think Yankees will try to make him, build up his value a little bit and then trade him just because they don't have any room, and he still has some value because of how young he is.
Yeah, I don't see any purpose of really drafting him. I guess in a very deep league, if there's an IL, sure, but I don't see much value. How about Brendan Rodgers? Rockies don't really handle prospects all that well. We know that the Rockies now have a couple slots open with Arenado traded, with Daniel Murphy retiring. What's Rodgers' injury status and fantasy outlook?
Well, over the weekend, Rodgers was trying to steal a base, and he was diagnosed. He injured his hamstring, and he was diagnosed with a right hamstring strain. We were told now that he will rest at this point. It's not considered to be quote-unquote too serious, but again, hamstrings are a very dangerous thing because they can linger, they can be re-aggravated very easily, and right now, according to roster resources, there's a guy who's going to be playing in his position or taking his spot right now, and that's Ryan McMahon. You can see maybe a possible increase in at-bats for Ryan McMahon.
Okay, Jared Kelenic, what is his injury status?
Well, he was diagnosed with a grade 2 adductor muscle strain. Again, that's a groin strain. Everyone's saying knee, but when someone has groin pain, it can sometimes radiate toward the knee in the front part of the thigh. He has participated in batting practice over this past weekend, and he's scheduled to try to get in-game later this week. So hopefully it's not that bad, but usually a grade 2 strain takes a little bit longer to recover. So I'm a little bit concerned that maybe they're bringing him back a little bit too soon, and we'll see about that.
Interesting. Kelenic is somebody whose ADP keep rising. His stock keeps rising. The word before this was that he was going to be brought up this year. Other than batting average, we're talking about a guy who I think would hit the ground running. We're talking about a nice power speed blend. Will get RBIs, score runs. Depends on where he bats in lineup, of course, but definitely a worthwhile investment. If you're in a keeper dynasty league, you have to be all over this guy by now. I probably don't have to tell you that by now. Ruben and I just did a keeper league this past Saturday night, and we picked up Kelenic in that one at a nice, decent price. Is this injury going to hamper him this year? You talk about him playing through it. That they're really going to bring him up through an injury?
No, I think they're going to treat him with kid gloves. I think they're going to use this as a possible excuse to keep him down a little bit longer than they have to. But I agree with you. I think he is going to hit the ground running. I think he is going to be he's my choice of being Rookie of the Year in the American League because he will be up sometime this year. I think he will be up, though, when he is fully healthy.
All right. Talk about starting pitchers now. The trio, Chris Sale, Noah Syndergaard, Luis Severino. We talked about it a week or so ago with Stefania Bell, but what is the update for the trio, and what are we doing with them in fantasy?
Okay, well, let's start with Chris Sale. Chris Sale had Tommy John surgery last year. It's about a year since he had it. He is throwing from flat ground 90 feet. Red Sox Chief Baseball Officer Chaim Bloom has said that Sale continues to make progress and could be fully stretched out by middle of next year, which is this year. So I think he will be ready, but I think they're going to treat him carefully. I think he may be back more towards, we discussed this before. I think he'll probably be up sometime after the All-Star break. I don't think you're going to get much value before then. Noah Syndergaard, he had Tommy John surgery around the exact same time, and he's on schedule. Except you see Noah Syndergaard pitching a lot more from the mound than you do Chris Sale, which means that Syndergaard is a little bit ahead of Chris Sale in his rehab, which means that you'll probably get more out of him, and he'll probably be around closer to June, maybe beginning of July, right before the All-Star break, something like that. And Luis Severino, his rehab is going well. It's been said that he will return sometime June or July. He did have Tommy John surgery before Noah Syndergaard and Chris Sale. He had it in February of last year. He did throw his first bullpen session early this week. It was a 20-pitch session, and there were no issues with it. So he should be on track. He may actually be a little bit ahead of Chris Sale. So coming back in order, I would probably be Syndergaard, Severino, Sale.
So Chris Sale is being projected by ATC for a 3.7 ERA and 1.1 WHIP. That's the ERA probably a little bit higher than he's used to. He's used to sub-3 numbers. WHIP, he's used to sub-1, but 1.1 is incredible. Is this something that we know Chris Sale is a fantastic pitcher? Can he right away, right off the docket, produce these kinds of great numbers? Does that make any sense to you?
Not with his herky-jerky movement of his arm. I don't think so. People were nervous about him needing Tommy John surgery earlier in his career. So I don't think that it's going to happen right away. If anything, you may see it toward the end of September, get back to the regular Chris Sale. But at that point, your fantasy season may be gone. So you may be just holding an empty roster spot at that point.
Yeah, I kind of think that these numbers for Sale, ATC, or just any other projection system is highly inflated. I have some projection systems that have him for a 3.26 ERA. That's crazy. And plus the innings. He's not getting anywhere near 80 innings this year.
The Red Sox starters aren't that great either, so they may just bring him in and have him come back and pitch instead of doing a rehab in the minors, because you don't know what the minor league system is going to do this year. They may have him just come back and pitch 1 or 2 innings as a quote-unquote rehab that way. So you never know. This is going to be a strange year.
Yeah, but you're not starting him in your fantasy lineup if he's doing 1 inning of rehab. So I just don't see the value. Like if he's available in the NFBC which is no IL, and you have the absolute last pick of the snake draft, are you rostering Chris Sale? I'm not.
No. Maybe if you're in a keeper league for next year, but not for this year.
Or IL. If you have an IL slot, sure, put him in, you take him last and put him in your IL. There's no harm there. But if I don't even think he's worth the roster spot at all in that. Severino is next, and to me, Noah Syndergaard is the only one who seems more intriguing. I think the way he throws, less herky-jerky than Sale, he can get more up to speed. Will he be as good as projections say? Probably not, but he's probably still going to be a very fantasy-relevant pitcher. And the Mets could be going for it this year. You never know. I think the second half of the year might be interesting. Probably not worth the price he's going for right now, but definitely above replacement in many leagues.
No, 100%. But the issue with both Severino and Syndergaard is that they had abdominal issues. They had core muscle issues like an oblique and stuff like that earlier in their career. So they have a history of this type of injury before. Sale never had any issue. He may have had a little bit neck here, a little bit of low back there, but Syndergaard and Severino, it's a matter of how fast they start pushing themselves and whether or not they push themselves too fast, too quickly.
Carlos Carrasco, we know there's an elbow issue. Why don't you give us first the word of what's going on with him?
All right, well, with Carrasco, he was experiencing elbow soreness. He has thrown, actually a couple of days ago, he threw from 75 feet, and he's scheduled to throw from 90 to 120 feet later this week. Opening day is still in question. I think the Mets are going to also bring him along a little bit slowly because he was a very big part of that trade.